All right, hang on one sec, guys. I'll be right there.
Bundy, did you catch that?
No, what'd you say?
I gotta go. I gotta get ready for tomorrow.
Oh yeah, no worries.
But I'm gonna listen to the show.
Yeah.
But I will talk to you on Wednesday.
Yeah. Also, we'll have the game on tonight if you want to come through.
Tonight's gonna be pretty backed up.
No
I got a lot of shit to do.
No worries.
Packing up. But yeah, Wednesday it is, and I'm gonna listen to the show.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Sorry about that.
Of course. Yeah. Life happens.
See you in a minute.
Peace.
Pocket Letter, who is this guy? This guy on the screen.
Oh, Mr. Let Go. Yeah, we were talking about his video today. I think we should be good to go. Hot Program is live. The only issue is sometimes it doesn't update the title. That was the issue I was having. And then I need to like do it manually. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I got a cold and possibly COVID, or I got the flu and possibly COVID.
Oh, you're not sure?
I got a couple more COVID tests to take. The first one I took was 2 days ago. It was negative. I felt worse yesterday than all the other days. And I'm not feeling great today, but I can breathe. Yep, this is good. My head seems clear, which is also good.
Alright, so the one thing you may want to get used to doing is pulling up YouTube on your end. And if you go into the YouTube Studio tab, you'll have the ability to edit the title of the video. So basically, you would go to YouTube, click on your icon, it'll say YouTube Studio, then there'll be an area for content, and then you click on a tab. Alright, so then there should be a tab that says live.
Okay, so go to my channel.
Well, go to YouTube Studio.
Right, go to my channel.
However you get to YouTube Studio. Yeah, sometimes it's a fast way to get to it, but and then content live, and then you just want to edit the title and description of the event after I make it. So like this one I named Bending the Truth, but I can't change the title on your personal channel. And I set it in Restream, but I don't think it updates it properly.
Hey, Jay.
Yeah, what's up?
Your mic audio is live on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about that. I think that's because you guys are... Oh, that's because there's a mixer on this hot program start screen.
Do you like pug dogs?
Yes.
Oh no, now I just deleted it from also younger on pugs. So when I see something great with pugs, I often share it with her.
My family's always had pugs. Got one free from a neighbor that had one of those. Got in contact with the owners. Yeah, he can sell all the dogs. So ever since then,
Really?
yeah. Kind of strange, but
I'm gonna try to close a few tabs because you know what the funny thing is.
What could you see the live stream on your thing?
cheapest Frenchie I've seen was like $1,500 or something like that.
All right, gang. Welcome to the hot program. Sorry, these guys are talking about pugs.
It's okay.
Let's go ahead and get jamming here. Let me stop sharing my screen for a second so I can pull up the thing that we're supposed to be doing today. All right, let me pull up this video. Here we go. All right, guys, we're ready to go. Welcome, everybody to the hot program. Y'all already know what it is. I'm your host with the most, and we're all the way from the East Coast. There's nowhere on the map like the good old East Coast. And I am joined by a man who, if he was a fish, still would not believe in the one true cod. A man who needs no introduction. My one black friend. How you doing today, man?
A little under the weather.
Yeah, he's feeling a little sick. He might get that. He's not sure if he's got the flu, the COVID, the monkeypox. You don't think it's monkeypox. That's good.
I barely even know what that is.
Me either.
So, I know people have mentioned it. I couldn't show you a picture of it. I don't know.
So yeah, we hope you start feeling better. You're vaxxed and boosted and all that stuff.
Not boosted. I am vaxxed, but I know this thing to avoid the YouTube strike on medical information or whatever. I'll say this: I am not a doctor. However, I understand that I'm not feeling well today.
Yeah. Well, we hope we get taken care of, man. And actually, I need to make an appointment to get my. I'm trying to think of what some of the euphemisms I've heard used are.
The unspecified virus of unknown origin. The critical drink uses that one, and I like that. I thought that's very clever.
It's a mouthful, but yeah, that one.
Another one I use is the plague.
Oh yeah, I mean it's yeah, but then I'm not. But then I wouldn't know if you were talking about COVID or the ignorance that spread it.
It's the unknown virus of unspecified origin is what I'd be referring to.
All right, so there's this channel that I have been discovered recently. I think James Apperson put me onto this channel, and it's pretty good. We checked out one of their videos, but it's not too long ago. But we'll do another one.
Okay. Pardon my shock. I'm not. Believe it or not, I'm still not used to like a lot of internet things like notifications, which are invasive. Some are useful, but most of them. Also, folks, be careful when you input a phone number into your phone. I have a new hire on my team, and I was adding her phone number, and I accidentally input it wrong. I got a response that said, "Who's this?" And since that day, I've received monumental spam about my Netflix subscription. I blocked the number already. I hid alerts, and I'm still getting them. So whoever this is using multiple things, and I'm wondering, like, should I tell the Secret Service or FBI about this person and see if they can, like, see if this is indeed a scammer, or those two things just are unrelated, but they coincided? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's probably a lot of that. Hopefully they don't get anything too sensitive. So,
well, I don't reply to those anyway. Netflix, if they want to reach me, they know how to reach me because they have my, if I remember right, my address, my phone number, and my card number when I signed up.
Yeah.
So, and an email address. So I'm figuring they can use one of those outlets to reach me if they really want their $15 a month. And I watch something like once every 2 months on Netflix anyway. So, but it's cheaper than a movie ticket. So, some movie tickets.
There you have it. That's how I think of it too. That's exactly how I think of it. I hardly ever watch it.
Almond Trees.
Yeah, have you watched any of their stuff before?
I've seen a lot of their stuff, but it's been a while.
Hillary's emails is here. How's it going?
People who make it out of manipulative supremacist groups, like exploitative religious and pseudoscientific organizations, are often faced with distortions from two directions. When they attempt to convey their experiences of manipulation to members of their former group, their words are magically transformed into, "I'm mad, evil, and weak." But when they share their story with non-members as a cautionary tale, their words are often magically transformed into, "I'm gullible, asinine, and spineless." After a while, the apostates realize they're in the no-one's land of the unheard, and it begins to become clear why these groups continue to thrive. Groups with a talent for bending truth, preaching love while denouncing non-members as a subhuman underclass, claiming to champion peace while committing acts of barbarism, pontificating about family values while tearing up countless homes, promising freedom and enlightenment while enforcing ignorance and exercising total control. I want to explore some of the mechanics of manipulative groups, dispatching some of the stereotypes about the people who get recruited by them, and reflecting on preventative measures we might take to avoid recruitment. But if there's just one thing I really want to do in this video, it's to communicate the importance of acknowledging a simple but profound fact. We can all be manipulated. At a press conference on manipulative groups, Ian reveals he lost tens of thousands of dollars when he was recruited by a group who proposed that clusters of alien spirits are attached to all humans, keeping us from our full potential. Ian tells us how he and the other group members paid through the nose and every other orifice for a special kind of counselling, which they were told would rid them of these spirits. They were told that once these spirits are gone, they would be the primary causal agents of their lives, with skills such as telekinesis, total recall, and mastery over illness. No evidence was given for any of this. The alien story was the unsubstantiated revelation claim of the group's founder, and no records have ever been produced of a single person gaining any of the special powers or knowledge described. What do we think of Ian? Does he lack intelligence? No, his intelligence is above average. He's a highly creative, resourceful man. That's why the group considered him such a juicy prospect. Is he a bit credulous, quick to accept whatever he's told? No. In fact, by default, he's a cautious, skeptical fella. Is he driven by narcissism, desiring supremacy over others? No. He's always been compelled by deeply humanitarian instincts. Of course there are folks out there who are gullible, obtuse, submissive, power-hungry, escapist, lazy. But it's a huge mistake to assume that successful recruitment into manipulative groups depends on the presence of these kinds of traits. And while we're hunting for them in Ian's case, we're missing 6 crucial words. He was recruited by a group. He was subjected to a process. The idea of alien spirit clusters wasn't presented to him in the bald way he presented it to us. Ian was carefully steered through a sequence of experiences, so that by the time the alien spirits concept was mentioned, a range of key psychological elements had been established to ease its entry and help insulate it from criticism. Later on, I'll be looking at how this was done. Just as we can become distracted by the red herring of personality deficiencies, we can become misled by the notion of predisposing circumstance. Some psychologists have generated lists of situational factors that can leave us vulnerable to manipulative groups. Factors like weak family bonds or recent bereavement. Problem is, when we don't find ourselves reflected in those items, we can be left with the impression we're not vulnerable. When we see an item like weak family bonds, we might satisfy ourselves that we're not at risk because we have strong family bonds. But strong family bonds can put people at risk too. Many people are recruited by a relative, and if your whole family's been indoctrinated, you could be born into a manipulative group. In these cases, even if you wake up and smell the Kool-Aid, strong family bonds might keep you feeling trapped inside the group under the threat of disconnection from your family. Members of manipulative groups are a diverse population, and it serves us well to think creatively about how these groups might hook us in.
All right, I really like the direction of this. I'm not sure if my one black friend has any initial thoughts, but I think this is important because it is important that we try to identify the factors. And I got to be honest with y'all, a lot of religion is so stupid. And we do deal with people who are clearly of deficient character, especially when you're dealing with apologists. But I think what he's getting at now is actually something that I feel like this is much more practical. So this is the second Theremin Trees video I watched. I forget what the first one was. But it was amazing. It was something I can't remember. It was not too long ago. But this is the same vibe where this is now something that I think is going to help you deal with family and friends.
True.
Because I think for so many of us, that's the motivation. And a lot of the people that we know and love are not psychotic in this way. So it's more beneficial to understand how, let's just say, a normal, well-adjusted, well-intentioned person can get caught up in these things. And then at the same time, having a mechanistic understanding can help you understand why you don't want to be a part of that. And then maybe we can communicate a little bit better.
Sorry. Well, my personal feeling is I think I know exactly which group this is covertly referring to. And I've had some experience with that group, not as a member, but as someone who was on the outside looking in and fairly interested in their practices. I never joined them, but I certainly did get my evaluation with the
yeah.
I think something key here to remember. I'll give you an example from my own life and sort of analogy. I work with concrete blocks at times, building walls or whatever. And the thing about a concrete block is it is immensely strong. And for every bit that it is strong, it is incredibly delicate. If you drop one, I don't care if it's on the hard ground, if it's on asphalt, if it's on concrete, it's probably going to break. So it's immensely, I would say, delicate as it is strong. Now, if I fill that same block with concrete, even though it's made out of concrete, if I fill it with concrete, it's probably not going to break because the voids that were in it are now filled. And it has become a solid thing, like a brick is a solid thing, but still on the right surface, it will chip, it can crack, and it might break. Human beings, with their religious opinions, their religious faith, are much the same way. Some of these people in this group, I believe this man may be referring to the unspecified religion of known origin. I think a lot of those people believe very dearly what they've been told. And just like prayer, they're depending on it. It solves a problem in the way, say, I'll use my aunt as an example. She was helping me out with something earlier in the week, and she was saying, you need to pray about it when she knows I'm an atheist. But that's her way. Prayer solves a problem for her. Prayer allows her to multitask better. She's put something in the hands of God. She now can move on to the task in front of her, knowing that God is working in the background feverishly to put right what she prayed about. Hey, God, fix this before it goes to crap. So I think a lot of people with their faith practices, they are doing that. They're displacing their responsibility onto the deity or deities. And in the case of this unspecified religion of known origin, it would appear that they would say essentially these spirits manifest themselves in your body, and the only way that you will ever regain control of your life is to learn to dispel these spirits from your body. That's not so different than Christianity making sure that demons don't take you over. Other religions have similar things too, no doubt about it. So ultimately, the religion is a way that the person can sort of feel more powerful, knowing that, or be empowered. That's what I want to say. Be empowered because they feel that a deity is going to take some of the responsibilities that they should be handling. But that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with all that. To me, this speaks. It's funny because I think Hillary's email said this. I think to them this got them thinking on the Scientology tip. A lot of other people, but to me, this is ordinary Christianity. Ordinary, everyday Christianity perfectly fits this bill. I just think it's funny the way, because from my one black friend's perspective and mine, I think they're kind of all the same, whether you're in the Scientology, Christianity, Islam, or whatever. But it's funny when it comes from like the chat or like Hillary's emails, because I'm like, okay, so you see that about Scientology, but you don't seem to see that about Christianity. The issue is that you're not seeing this about your own faith. And that's weird too. And I think that is what's different, y'all. I got to be honest with you. That's where there's individual, personal differences. Because when I see something like this video, I was thinking about my religion. You couldn't start talking about the problems with religion around me and not have me start to think about my religion. And that is, I think, what ultimately led to me to be the type of reflective person that understood my religion is just as untrue as all the other ones. But for some people, they could go through this whole same song and dance, and they could go, ha, 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 yeah, and them silly Mormons, and them silly Scientologists, and those silly cult people, and they gonna be like, but man, I was up in church today praising that Jesus, and we was having us a good time in the name of the Lord. And the truth, the biblical truth, the truth that we stand upon as American Christians. And we sitting there like, oh, bro, you ain't realize you was in the group with all them other crazy folks? No, you ain't over here with us in the seer category. You over there in the not seeing category, because you don't see this as just, it's very interesting. My mom, growing up, parents always joke about you have selective hearing and selective memory, selective attention, but that's what I see in religious people. Boy, they can see right through everybody else's religion. It's just really kind of, but I'm telling y'all, you might not be like that. You might not be like that. Yeah, you will have to. And they really be on that, and that's what that's the Paula White, and that's who, and a lot of them, they're on that same.
I thought I heard her.
But again, how is it that Scientology is crazy for making you hold on to some cans, but Christianity ain't crazy for telling you you can speak in tongues and there's somebody else that can interpret the tongues? So a lot of us, man, I'm gonna let this
victory.
I'm gonna let this video. We're gonna roll the tape.
Well, I think you have to remember.
Some of us go through
hang on a
life
sec.
convinced we
Go ahead. Y'all pause it. You good? Go ahead, my one black friend.
Sure. When people think they have the truth, when people think they have the truth, it's hard to listen to anything else. And it's easy to be hypocritical without even noticing it. And sometimes you're being hypocritical, but what are you trying to do? Save face, convince others to join you in your belief, so maybe it doesn't feel so lonely. So I think you have some of that going on too, and maybe for some it's power, or the illusion is preferable. I was listening to that Superstitious by Stevie Wonder. Not only does it have an amazing beat, one of the lines from it, and I'm only going to remember part of it because I don't remember songs. Otherwise, I'd be a professional singer. Is keep me in a daydream. Wow. So imagine that. Let's take the example given here by Theremin Trees of this religious organization that believes that there's these aliens out there They have an effect on us here. They're these spiritual beings that live within us and don't belong in us, and we need to get them out so we can finally gain control of our lives, real control. And then we will have power not only to help ourselves, but others. But we truly have to be cleansed of these demons. Okay. The longer that, if you will, I'm going to call it a daydream. The longer that
angels
daydream,
have even dispatched from Africa right now. Africa right now. Africa right now. From Africa right now.
Those that don't have those bad guys, but different bad guys. As long as you can keep people locked in that daydream, you've got them. You've got them. You can get whatever you want to from them, and they'll gladly turn it over. And even the things that they begrudgingly turn over, they realize not doing this may jeopardize what I love about my particular organization. And if they are someone who is experiencing a lot of love flowing out of that organization to themselves, I don't think we can find a single non-believer of that particular faith practice that wouldn't understand why those people are working to stay in their faith, right? That they're manipulating things to stay in their faith. And forgive me, because one of my assistants is working. Two of my assistants are working today.
You're good. You're good.
To write to
I'll roll tape.
It's an almost Some of us go through life convinced we possess an almost clinical objectivity, that barring deliberate deceptions or the odd quirky optical illusion, we generally perceive reality as it actually is, and that we make decisions on a firmly rational basis. For over a century, social psychologists have been ripping that fantasy apart, conducting experiments that elicit the most bizarre, counterintuitive human responses, and exposing a gamut of distinct biases, each of which distorts our perception in its own specific way. A landmark concept in social psychology emerged in the 1950s that provided a framework on which to untangle all kinds of paradoxical human behavior. Leon Festinger's theory of cognitive dissonance. It also described arguably the biggest implement in the toolboxes of manipulative groups, who not only rely on it to keep existing members under their influence, but also actively exploit it to recruit new members. Festinger and his colleagues proposed that we seek consistency within our cognitions, our thoughts, emotions, memories, perceptions, and that when we discover an inconsistency, we experience a psychological discomfort that motivates us to try and reduce that conflict. So, what does dissonance look like in action? Say we've been taught to believe all members of Group A are evil. One day, a friend we've always known to be a good person reveals she's a member of Group A. This arouses dissonance because our experience contradicts our belief. We can reduce this dissonance in a number of ways. If we're not hugely invested in the belief, we might opt for method 1, simply adjust our belief. We might, for instance, change it to, not all members of Group A are evil. If we're equally invested in the belief and the friendship, we might try to preserve both, using method 2, denial. We might refuse to believe our friend is a true member of Group A, granting her special exemption because she's just not like those other folks. If we're more invested in the belief than the friendship, we might go for method 3, select confirming information. Here, we cherry-pick information consistent with our belief and ignore information that contradicts it. Any flaws in our friend's behavior or attitudes can be turned against her, while her goodness is ignored. Festinger and his colleagues noted that when we experience dissonance, we'll tend to avoid information or situations that threaten further dissonance. For instance, if we've denied that our friend is a member of Group A, we'll want to avoid the subject in future conversations. Or, if we've used selective information to cast our friend as evil, we might quickly break off contact to avoid giving her the chance to reason with us. But sometimes our response to dissonance is so horrendously distorted that it makes us almost invulnerable to further dissonance, reducing our need for avoidance. For example, say we look for evidence that our friend's evil, but can't find any. What if, time after time, we're confronted with good? How can we possibly preserve our belief that all members of Group A are evil now? Well, all is not as bleak as it seems. We have method 4, repackaging. Believing that no member of Group A could possibly be good, we could repackage our experience of our friend's goodness as something it's not. We might tell ourselves she was only pretending to be good. It was all an act, a deception. And isn't that the most insidious evil of all? The evil that disguises itself as good? The wolf in sheep's clothing? We've now put our friend in a no-win position. Even her goodness has now become evidence of her evil. Now we don't even have to avoid her. Anything she does, good or bad, confirms our belief. Later on, I'll be looking at how manipulative groups explicitly employ these kinds of extreme contortions to put their critics in a no-win position, and keep their members under psychological lockdown.
Could I have you pause it?
Yeah.
Pocket Locker, please. Okay, so I think you had something on your mind. I got mine queued up here, so you can go ahead and say your thoughts.
I was just gonna say that this is what a lot of us experience in these relationships.
We have a powerful cumulative case.
There's nothing we can do that is the right thing, and it's why sometimes it's the functional reason of why I sometimes criticize us for focusing too much on effective tactics. The moral reason I don't want us to focus on tactics is because you're just being as manipulative as the apologist. You're sitting around having a conversation about what's the most effective way to manipulate people, rather than just sitting someone down and having a heart-to-heart about a disagreement. But the functional reason is because if someone's whole worldview and MO is putting you in a no-win situation, then you're just wasting your time spinning your wheels, because there is no tactic that's going to be interpreted positively. Like, it's just a waste of time. And I think when you find yourself in this situation, it's why, like, a lot of us have, like James has said, that like when it comes to my family and friends, they've left me nothing to lose, right? Because if I confront them, oh well, they don't like that. But if I decide, like, I'm already in a situation where there's nothing I can do that is going to be seen as good or positive or whatever. So at this point, you just got to go in and be honest. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Go ahead.
Okay. As you said that, I thought of presuppositional apologetics. I never spoke to a presuppositionalist, but if I had, I suppose the conversation would have gone into me asking them, okay, you believe in this God. Is there anything that this God should not do if they are the best moral actor available? Is there anything that God should not do? And try to get them to tell me what they think that would be. They likely would say, no, God can do anything. Excuse me. Can God take the life of a human being who doesn't deserve it? Can God lie? Can God steal or cause other people to steal or cause other people to lie? And there, of course, are examples in the Bible of all these things where the biblical God has done these things. When I'm switching gears a little bit, when I'm talking to Christians and I'm challenging them and I'll say, how do I know that you're a true Christian according to the Bible? And then I happily hear their answer. And then I'll ask them this. I'll go to Mark 16. And I'm going to say, can you do any of these things? So Mark 16, chapter 16 through 20. Excuse me. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, but he that believeth not shall be damned. And these signs shall follow them that believe. In my name shall they cast out devils. Can you do that?
You're right.
They shall speak with new tongues.
Yep. Can you
do that? They shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover.
Oh man,
it would be irresponsible for you to still be standing here talking to me if you are capable of that. Why wouldn't you be going from hospital to hospital with your friends, healing people?
Why do we still have hospitals?
If it were true that they had this ability alone,
we wouldn't even have hospitals. We wouldn't need hospitals. What would hospitals be?
It would be irresponsible of them not to be walking around in massive.
Well, I guess the hospital. You know what happened? People. The hospital would be where they are.
That's where you drop your sick ones off
to get laid on. Yeah, and then you just they lay hands on them. You pick them up the next day. They're good to go.
Right, or we meet at the football stadium or something like that, the baseball stadium, and people just start marching through the line. Have the believers on both sides, of a line, and the people who need healing just walk through or be pushed through in their wheelchair, on the gurney, what have you, if it really worked, right? If this is really true, if I can believe this part of the Bible,
right,
that's the world we should be living in.
Yeah.
So I'll continue. Verse 19. So then after the Lord had spoken unto them, he was received up into heaven and sat at the right hand of God. And they went forth and preached everywhere, the Lord working with them and confirming the word with signs following. Amen. So, okay, this doesn't say that you had to be there in Jerusalem roughly 2,000 years ago. It doesn't say that. And these signs, well, verse 16, he that believeth and is baptized shall be saved in my name. Oh, wait. But he that believeth not shall be damned. That's me, people like me. And these signs shall follow them that believe. Believe. Well, the Bible is making a claim. If I'm talking to G-Man, who many of you may have heard, the Bible is making a claim.
Absolutely.
I don't see any other condition that needs to be met here. It's very simple. These signs shall follow them that believe.
Yep. And they don't because they don't take it seriously.
I think most people don't read it. I think most believers. I think you've heard me say that before. I think other members in the audience have seen our show before. Yeah. I've heard me say that. I think it is a rare person who believes that. I was talking with my best friend's mom, and we were talking about the state of the United States, the condition that the place is in. And I think I missed an opportunity to sort of give her a quiz on, well, how do you feel about all these immigrants coming here? How do you feel about this? Things that the Bible addresses, right? Things that Jesus specifically talks about. It is your duty as a Christian to make life better for these people when they come here.
Right.
Even sacrificing your own comfort
so
that they will have some. That is what he literally calls people to do. That can be, when you're there, right? And you're doing it, that can be so fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
But when you don't see those people, or you only see them on TV and there's that distance, it may not feel that way. It may feel like those people have come to take something from me. They've come to take my country away, in a country of immigrants.
Absolutely.
So that's not what she said. That's not anything she said. But I should have, while she and I were talking, explore that. Well, tell me where you are on this. What do you think?
I'm gonna.
Concerns? Go ahead.
No. I was gonna say I have to step away for a second. I'm going to, if it's good with you, I'll just play the video.
Sure.
Real quick.
Thank you.
All right.
Various experiments have shown how dissonance can be actively exploited to induce positive responses. In a 1959 paper, Aronson and Mills investigated the role of initiation procedures in attitudes towards groups. They advertised for female subjects to join a group discussing the psychology of sex. But before being accepted, subjects were told they had to pass an embarrassment test. There were 3 experimental conditions. Subjects in the severe initiation condition read out loud to the experimenter a list of words considered obscene, as well as sexually explicit passages. Subjects in the mild initiation condition read out loud a list of sexual but non-obscene terms. Subjects in the no initiation condition weren't screened. Each subject then listened to the same pre-recorded discussion, deliberately designed to be boring. They then rated their perceptions of the group. Intuitively, one might think the more severe the initiation, the more the discussion's dreariness would be accentuated. But the reverse was true. Subjects from the severe condition showed the strongest liking for the group, rating it as significantly more attractive compared with the ratings of the other groups. Aronson and Mills explained this counterintuitive finding in terms of dissonance between 2 cognitions. Subjects in the severe condition had gone through a difficult experience to join the group, but the group wasn't worthwhile. When we invest time, effort, money, emotion in an enterprise, we want to believe our investment isn't wasted. So, we repackage useless enterprises as useful. This result, supported by other studies, demonstrates how worthless groups can be made to appear worthwhile. A decade later, Knox and Inkster showed just how quickly actions can induce attitudes. At a racetrack, 69 bettors were asked by one experimenter, just prior to betting, to rate the chances of their horse winning. 72 bettors were asked by a second experimenter, just after placing their bets. Using a 7-point scale, on average, pre-bettors rated their chances fair. Post-bettors rated their chances good. One bettor, who'd given a rating to the pre-bet experimenter and placed his bet, then spotted the post-bet experimenter and asked if the two were working together. He then inquired if he could now change his rating from fair to excellent. Studies like this show the important role behavior plays in dissonance. In fact, when we're looking at the components of dissonance, we could divide them into 3 broad classes: behavior, emotions, and thoughts. Pull hard enough on one, and in our drive for consistency, the others will follow. When we behave as if we're committed, our thoughts and emotions often fall in line. But how do we become so heavily invested in an idea that we find ourselves twisting concepts into their opposites, bending good into evil, love into hate, just to preserve that idea? While cognitive dissonance studies tend to focus on the conflict between 2 ideas, those 2 ideas don't of course exist in isolation. Networks of reinforcing ideas often lie behind them. For instance, regarding our hypothetical belief that Group A is evil, maybe our entire community has always vehemently condemned Group A. We might have behaved hatefully towards some members of Group A ourselves in the past, based solely on this prejudice. We might also have seen Group A sympathizers being attacked and ostracized. If it turns out Group A isn't evil, we have some tough realities to face. First, we have to admit our entire community is wrong. This could tap into some hefty issues around trust, loyalty, and credibility. Second, we'll have to admit our own hateful behavior was unjustified. This could have big implications for our self-image. Third, we now face being attacked and ostracized if we defend Group A, which taps into our ideas of safety and security. These tough realities might feel intensely threatening to us, but the threat goes away if we can find some way of preserving our belief that Group A is evil. So it is that we might find ourselves turning on our friend just to preserve a false belief. And of course, this might in itself make it even harder to admit our mistake in the future, because adding to all the other tough realities, we'll now have to admit we betrayed a good friend. Our minds are not objective, logical machines. Our minds are vast networks of ideas, striving not necessarily for truth, but for internal consistency. In view of this, it's plain to see why childhood is by far the most preferred period for indoctrination into manipulative groups. Parents and guardians can get in there right at the start and insert any unsubstantiated concept they like into the child's basic initial framework without resistance. And being implanted so early, they stand a good chance of becoming core beliefs, with rich networks of ideas reinforcing them, including strong associations of identity at many levels: individual, family, culture, perhaps nationality. If the unsubstantiated concept is later challenged, threatening tremors could be felt in all of these areas. Indoctrinating adults who've already developed an advanced cognitive network isn't so straightforward. Manipulative groups often have to insert their unsubstantiated ideas into a distinctly inhospitable environment. And it's no coincidence that in order to achieve that goal, some groups will try to mimic those childhood conditions by infantilizing adults. When I was a Christian, we were repeatedly told that we needed to be like children, trusting and dependent on Yahweh, which, in the total absence of any evidence of Yahweh, translates to trusting and dependent on the humans who claim to represent Yahweh. And there was a nice little threat thrown in there. If you didn't become like children, you'd never get into heaven. In a similar vein, we were told, lean not on your own understanding. Do not be wise in your own eyes. The message in all these commands couldn't be clearer. Wherever your ideas conflict with those of the group, it's your ideas that need to change. Folks who submit to these commands can now have vast amounts of their cognitive network rewritten without substantial resistance, just like childhood. Of course, adult recruits are more of a bonus than a necessity for the major world religions, who are guaranteed a steady influx of child recruits, as long as the abuse of childhood religious indoctrination continues. Other groups who are more reliant on adult recruits often have to manipulate cognitive dissonance in more subtle ways.
All right. Cheers, gang, and a happy belated 420 to y'all because I needed to step away. But hey, don't be rolling your eyes over here. You non-smokers are the oddballs in this community. The majority of us here are users.
I have desserts to my shame and to my hurt. I have dessert. You go right ahead and enjoy your relaxing smoke.
But no, this is I really do like a lot of this, and to be honest, it's convicting me. I feel like a lot of the lack of progress with friends and family in my own life is at this point more has to do with me than them, because we know what situation they're in. They're in the midst of all this. They're caught up, and they've dealt with all of this that he's talking about. They fit this to a T, and wow, it's maybe a lot of us, we got to start sending out these videos.
Maybe. I want to just touch on something that's riffing off what you just said. So think of love, comfort, and acceptance. Within a religion's social, or any group really, within that social space, we are receiving love. More importantly, people are accepting of the love we give. More importantly, okay? I forgot what the other two were.
Love, comfort, and acceptance.
All right, let's talk about comfort. Anytime we have a need, say you're moving, often in the religious organization, you can find volunteers. Just tell the person that's in charge of the youth ministry, and you have all these kids that show up that'll help you move, and it'll just cost you $35 in pizza and soda.
Right.
And you replace a moving company that might be very expensive. The ones that drive will use their own cars to transport your things from your old place to your new place.
Yes.
It's fantastic.
I've done it. I call it the Mormon Express.
The Mormon Express. Okay. If you are grieving, the same is true. Those people will gather around you. I think love bombing is, I've used that term. I don't think for this that's the right term. I think that's too insidious of a term. I'm going to grab a drink, but I'm listening. But yeah, too insidious of a term. So, if you have that need, you have people who will gather around to help you fill it, to help you, hey, what do I do in this situation? There's all sorts of people that come out of the woodwork with all sorts of knowledge, and they help you. The thing that happens a lot, at least I've seen it happen a lot, is when someone dies, other people, friends and family, cook for the family of the deceased. Why? So as that family is grieving, they don't have to figure out where's our food coming from. They don't have to make time for that. They can just sit there and process it, or walk around, process it, whatever. So yeah, love, comfort, and acceptance. If you have a particular, let's say you're funny looking, you don't feel so great about yourself, you have a low self-opinion. Often in these groups, people accept you just as you are without judgment. In fact, do a better job of it than you do for yourself. And so they make you feel welcome. Those things, those three things, root you in that group. And they help you be, oddly enough, if you follow the rules really well, you'll be giving something that's even stronger than the other three: authority. And when they give you authority, you now feel it's up to you to help the group survive. And you are making hopefully a positive difference in moving the group forward towards its goals, or giving them or helping them arrive at even better goals and achieving those. So that's my take on it. Obviously, I'll wait for the next section to comment, but softly catches the monkey. I think any of us that have ever seen, I don't know, somebody's dog that we want to pet or just get to stop barking at us or what have you, we do try the gentle approach. And once the fear is gone from that animal, it's willing to investigate. And it can know, okay, this person means no harm to me or the people I protect. Maybe I should treat this person with kindness.
Yeah, so
like a horse does.
So the thing that I wanted to touch on briefly here is just that, man, these things work so well in concert, and I don't know which one is the most basic need or if they just all come together. But I've seen this, in my own church communities, like the church I worked at where we had an atheist on our staff. I think he felt loved in that community, and he kind of had his own insecurities. Like he was really big and he was really nerdy. And then he had some odd social habits, like he didn't dress or have the same hygiene rituals or styles as a lot of us normally do. But he was a fucking phenomenal dude, really smart, helped us a lot with our IT and stuff, and did our security, kept order, and so he was great. But I think, to your point, I remember the more I got to befriend him and spend a little bit of time in his home with him and even observe his family dynamic, like I think his family loved us being in his life, loved it. Because even though they knew he was an atheist, like a hardcore atheist, like no ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? And now he's working at a church, right? And they're not under any illusion that this is going to make him a Christian. And neither are we, right? But to your point, that love, that acceptance, that all of a sudden he has friends over the house. Yeah, all of a sudden we shot a music video in his backyard. So I'm sure to his mother going, he damn near grown at this point, right? He's got early 20s maybe. Right, and now all of a sudden he's back to her feeling like he's starting to have a healthy social life. He's got friends all of a sudden. He's talking about girls he likes. He's got, it's a different thing. And so I think she was recognizing all the positive stuff in his life. I think he was recognizing all the positive stuff, and it had everything to do with the social bonds, little to nothing to do with the actual theology or the religion of it all. But to your point, if that's the source of it, then that's the hook. And if you're not so devout or orally motivated or have sort of a concrete atheism affixed to your identity, then you are going to be that much more susceptible to just going along with the group. Now, the thing that's crazy about it is he's even saying, hey, this is not ideal. It's a little bit harder this way. The most ideal thing to do is do this with children. It's a lot easier with children. But here's what's crazy. Most of the people we deal with were indoctrinated as children. Or we were indoctrinated as children. What's even more profound to me about this is this technique and tactic is effective with adults, right? This is like a how-to playbook on how to indoctrinate adults, right? But even though it's a lot easier to indoctrinate children, and that's the more better age to do it, guess what? They're in the same exact environment. So children are getting to say, so not only are children more vulnerable to it, but they're still using the same tactics and the same playbook. So most of the people in our lives were indoctrinated as children with techniques so powerful and effective, they actually work on adults. You see what I'm saying? So you combine these tactics, work on adults, with what we're always talking about Uncle Bobby. This stuff was taught to us while we were so soft in the head. We didn't understand. We didn't stand a chance, and neither did anybody in our lives that's, going through this.
Well, let me tell you, I'll sort of give you a parallel. Earlier in September of this year, was it August? It was September. I had a surgery. I had heart surgery. I showed up at the hospital. Once I got checked into the hospital, my responsibilities were essentially over. Everything, if I needed a glass of water, I didn't go get it.
You indoctrinate children.
If I had to pee, someone handed me that jug and I could pee in the jug, which I don't recommend. Just use a bathroom. If I wanted something to eat, I did not have to prepare it. I merely had to make the choices. Someone else went through a lot of trouble preparing that food. Someone else went through a lot of trouble bringing me the food if they needed an x-ray. Someone came along and pushed my gurney to the x-ray room. I didn't walk down there. No, I was taken down there. Again and again, again and again, my responsibilities were simply to be present. In an environment like that, that builds your confidence in those people. If you see somebody make a mistake while you're in a hospital, you almost always, from my experience, I see somebody else correct it. In my experience, the idea is excellence. The idea is patient comfort. It's survival. It's thriving. That is the typical attitude that I see. And I see people working as a team. I've had a few surgeries, I don't know, like 7 or whatever. But I've seen people work as a team. And they care about me. They're paid to, but they do it anyway. They care anyway. I don't know about doing the job for free, but the caring is genuine. It just happens to be a job. So again, that builds confidence. I'm wheeled into the operating room. This is a surgical theater. I'm like, I think I was in this room 2 years ago? And someone's like, I think you were here 2 years ago in this room. I'm seeing what must be millions of dollars in equipment that these people probably wouldn't have if they couldn't do the job. Again, I'm building confidence in this group of people. I talked with the anesthesiologist, what have you, the two of them. I noticed everybody's doubled up. 2 heart surgeons, 2 anesthesiologists. There's one guy that didn't have a redundant physician in that whole room. So I know if the surgeon drops dead, it's okay.
There's
awful. Yeah. There's another one right there. If the anesthesiologist
does something wrong, the other one's gonna be like, nope, stop, don't do that. You're gonna be like, stop, don't do that. Yeah.
My confidence is increasing.
Boosted. Yeah.
Now, what I don't know if my experience is typical.
Right.
I know the first time
you don't know if the second anesthesiologist was actually just me, somebody with my training and background, just playing anesthesiologist for the comfort. This is the comfort routine at this particular hospital. Is we send an orderly in each of the other positions just to make everybody feel like they're getting that big rich person hospital experience. So they're actually actors. Of course not, right? But of course not. But you'd have to come. You could cook up a conspiracy. Hey, it's LA. It's hard to find work out here, right? So everybody's there. You do what you can. Oh, that's great.
You could make a conspiracy out of it if you wanted to. But for me, as I'm a patient there, any anxiety I have is melted away. In these religious organizations, clubs, what have you, sort of the same thing as at work. There's a deacon, there's a deacon, there's a deacon. So these are authority figures within the structure that you can go to. They are redundant. So-and-so is the guest pastor, or they're the youth pastor, whatever. Excuse me, whatever. There are multiples of these people in the structure of the organization. If you can't talk to the one you want to, you probably could talk to one of the other ones and they could get you to that person you need. If you should need to call on the structure to pay your bill, help a family member or friend in another community find a sister church to go to, that sort of thing, there are people who can help you do that. That adds to the validity of the organization's message, not just to the legitimacy of the organization. They may, like Joel Osteen, for instance, he may have a very fine church with wonderful people who are extremely helpful. But is what he's saying true? It can be, and I'm going to say this, it probably oftentimes is irrelevant to almost everybody sitting in that audience. Here's the religious test.
Hang on one sec. So just because I'll forget, Melody Joy doesn't know what the cough times 2 is. So cough times 2 is one we don't really use anymore. But the idea was there used to be a thing where, the idea was that if somebody put the cough times, was that if somebody put an elbow cough in after like when I'm smoking, if somebody hits the elbow cough, I would give everybody 10,000 pocket change. And then we would double it if somebody redeemed the cough times 2. So it just is like if I cough in the next minute, it's worth twice as much. But yeah, we rarely use it. Good afternoon, Stupid Whore Energy. Also, don't forget, guys, you got to put an exclamation point redeem to make the sound thing go off. Yeah. All right, but just to be a fuckface, I coughed afterwards. Yeah, to wait. I waited out the clock. All right. So, but no, this is a great conversation, and I think that what you're touching on here is how this works in the actual lives of people we know, and putting all this in perspective. It's kind of predictable, right? That people fall for this or go along with this, and it really does speak to how difficult it is for those of us that have broken out of it. And I think there's something different going on with us. We were watching this guy Gino Jennings talking about how Christmas is of the devil. And
Christmas is of the devil.
And he's going on.
Gino Jennings talks like this?
Yeah. Oh, Gino. You've heard Gino. Oh, yeah.
I know who Gino is. Pocket Locker. Don't you? What makes you think I don't know who he is?
So.
Pocket Locker, stop dressing like a whore.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. Yeah, heathens. He was going on about this, and he's going on about how religion is a con and your religion is nonsense and it makes you a heathen, all this stuff. And he didn't understand that every single thing he was saying applies to him. And there's just some of us who, when we heard religion criticized as we grew older, we turned that lens on ourselves naturally. Just like any other conversation. If James does a stream tomorrow and starts talking about here's all the signs of how to deal with an abusive relationship, and you got to be able to identify and when you're in an abusive relationship, all of us are going to be in your head running down your relationships. Are they abusive, and are you, in fact, the abuser in that abusive relationships? If the next stream, Lena is talking about why Christianity is fascism, and therefore you can't support it, everybody in your head is going to be running down, is Christianity really a fascism, and are you a fascist, right? That is what a person of, to me, natural, mature, adult self-awareness is. Because remember, guys, this is a very important social skill. Let me give you the type of thing it was. Imagine back in the day, everything was a small tribe. If you got ostracized from the tribe, that was basically a death sentence. So when the tribe held the tribal meeting, all right, everybody listen up. Now, somebody has been going into the rice storage and has been taking more than their allotment at unauthorized times. Now, we know some of y'all get a little hungry at night, but that is not how this works. Now, you're going to have to stop that, all right? All right, everybody listen up. Now, there's a report going around that some of the men have been making inappropriate advances at some of the wives. Now, we know that things can get a little bit out of hand when you go after another man's wife, so y'all are going to have to knock that shit off, okay? What am I getting at, guys? If you didn't listen, if you didn't have the self-awareness to reflect and ask yourself, were you the problem in this situation? The group was going to identify you as the problem. They were going to eventually figure out that not only did we figure out who was stealing the grains and who was trying to hit on everybody's wife, but it turns out it was the same fuckfaces that are always avoiding the rules and then acting like we wasn't talking about them. So then we're going to be like, turns out it was Cameron Bennett doing all of this. Boom, we give Cameron Bennett the boot. Now, Cameron Bennett basically just got a death sentence because in the old clan, and but what's he gonna do? Roll over to the enemies and the rivals and say, hey, they just kicked me out for breaking all the rules. Well, you got no, it was a really big deal. So you had to have this self-awareness, y'all. What I'm trying to show you is this self-awareness. It isn't like a preference. It isn't like us being like, oh, it'd be really great if you could take our feelings into consideration. We're not being softies. We're not being too sensitive. We're not caught up in our emotions. We're just being honest honest with you that part of the maturation process is a normal social and emotional IQ, and part of that is enough self-awareness to recognize when the problem that is being discussed in the group is you. And what we see with these ministers and apologists and all this other stuff is that lack of that basic self-awareness. And this is what I mean, guys. We're different. And I want people to start to think about that and help me understand what leads to that difference, because it's a very profound difference that we went through that social maturation. When people started talking junk about religion, we checked out our stuff. People started talking about problems in the Bible, we went to that Bible, read it to find them problems, right? People started pointing out that there were problems in our arguments. What did we do? Looked into it, stopped making those arguments. But now when we deal with our friends and family, peers, some of these other people out here in our social media spaces, something fundamentally different is going on, because they're going through that same information, they're hearing them same arguments, and we know that. Why? Because they're making YouTube videos about it. They're making social media posts about it. They're literally going on their channels that they never had to make and declaring to the whole world that they can see this problem in everybody else's religion, that they can undermine, you will have a Christian apologist undermining the Kalam cosmological argument as presented by some Muslim, and then turn around and take William Lane Craig argument number 2 and go with the argument for contingency and act like they're good to go. It's just something different going on. They're in a different population than us.
Again, when a person does that, they are admitting to themselves the weakness of the argument. I want to go back to Geno Jennings for a moment. When he puts on that's the wrong term. If he has a sermon that is pointing out the hypocrisy that he sees, and this is false, and this is false, and that sort of thing, he's full well aware of what that means for him. But again, let's go back to my hospital analogy. I noticed all these people are taking care of me. They're seeing to my needs. My trust level goes up. There's no place I'd rather be. Don't put me in another hospital. Keep me here. The care I'm being given is excellent. All I have to do is get well. That is my job. All I have to do is get this. Be still. Right? My doctors know what to do. The nurses know what to do. If there's an emergency, as my doctor said to me years ago, my cardiologist, one of the two, you couldn't have been in a better place if there was a problem. 2 heart surgeons in a cardiac unit. And I'm looking at her like, you understand it better than me. So the second time I go back, I don't have any of the fears I had the first time. None of them. Almost the same setup.
Yeah.
Probably 4 or 5.
It also brings in an interesting point about the church and the type of indoctrination that can happen, because they effectively provide that same second and third opinion for you, right? So if you're questioning one of the church's teachings or one of the church's doctrines, all the ministers are there like, well, this is what it is or how it is, right? And there's, if you're going through, if you're wrestling with the godly perspective of marriage, if you're having a hard time submitting to your husband, for instance, you're going to have all those other godly women around you going, oh, you need to submit to your husband. They're all going to be pointing you the passages.
Whether they do it or not.
Whether they do it or not. They're going to be, it's going to be that effectively that second or third opinion giving you this confidence that isn't in fact the way you should go.
Think of the power of that. If someone is speaking to you, trying to rein you in, and they know they're being completely hypocritical, but you don't know that.
Right.
It helps to keep the group in alignment. I'm telling you, to me, as a person who loved anthropology classes and loved psychology classes and, studied marketing, how all of this works so beautifully, how it's all been figured out so amazingly well blows my mind.
Right.
And it is consistent all over the world. It is consistent all over the world, no matter how rich or how poor. I was looking at different places in Europe and some island nations, because I might be gone half of next year, like the second half of next year. I might just leave the U.S. for a while, make my body my job, work on exercise and eating right. And all that stuff, and get in the mindset that when I come back, I can stay in great shape, get myself there. Fly my fiance out, come and join me, we'll do Airbnb for 6 months in a few different countries, whatever. Let's go. But I noticed there was one nation which I had only heard about and never read anything about. Airbnb had this is an island nation with super duper, like incredibly beautiful views, amazing beaches. You would rent like a thatch hut. You could rent that. And then they had probably the thing I would love to do and not rope anybody else into is the village experience. For $474, I forget whether it was a week or a month, you could stay with a family in the village, in one of the villages, in their hut, and get the full experience. Here's what it's like for us. You're eating with them, you're doing chores with them, you're going to sleep in their hut and that sort of thing. You are being integrated into the family, right? You're part of the family now. And they probably tell you that when you left. You're part of this family now. And they genuinely feel that way, because you probably after a week or two would have made an amazing impact on them. And the same is true. They would have impacted you. So that being said, that was attractive to me to maybe try, because it is a way for me to look at how other people have solidified their community. I'm one of those people that's often looking for the best way. What's the best way to do this? Whether it's at work where I'm telling my chief assistant, I want it done this way, and she starts doing it another way. And she quickly finds out why I said, I want it done this way. I've sort of been where she is before. But with those, people on that island, I haven't been where they are before, perhaps with that tight-knit community of exceedingly impoverished people who probably have some of the richest lives of anyone on earth, right? There's not so much toiling in that community. You have what you need because your neighbors make sure you do. And I think that's a different kind of support system. I don't know if they're centered around religion or not, or if they have their own religion or they were given one by some Catholic explorers who came through there. Well, let's introduce these people to Christ because we want them to go to heaven and not to be losing out on that. So I guess from that, I'm just trying to say, like, these organizations are extremely powerful. And again, I think the part that makes it most powerful is the redundancy, because there's a bad apple in the bunch. We all love multiple Trump supporters, probably.
Right.
But then you can see somebody who wasn't kind on TV, who says vicious, nasty things on TV. And they're your Trump supporters that you love don't identify with that person at all. Like, no, I'm not that guy. And they're not that guy.
Right.
The things coming out of that person's mouth would not come out of the mouth of the person that you love or the people that you love that are Trump supporters. But that person who's sort of the bad apple isn't the leader. Again, that's the beauty of the group. It isn't the leader. And there are a certain number of people, it might take them a long time to critically look at the leader because you're taught not to.
Right.
Again, you have that beautiful acceptance, which is so powerful for people. It's so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have no interest in being a leader, if you just want to fit in, if you just want to be a brick in the wall and not the door, right? Then the acceptance is hugely important. If you don't want to be on the roof and you can't be, you're not strong enough to be on the foundation.
Bro, I'll tell you, it's deeper than that. It's life or death. It's life or death, because when we talk about if you don't want to be ostracized, if you don't want to be on the outsider group, we're talking about it from a modern first world perspective, right? And so, yes, that is true and very profound. But we always have to remember our brains, and therefore our identities and our cognition, is not evolved for right now. So right now, you can pick and choose, go with a different group. It's going to hurt. You'll cry a little, blah, 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 but you'll be all right. We don't have brains like that. To our brain, this is life or death. To our brain, getting cut off from this group or ostracized from the family or whatever is like suicide to the brain. Not to you personally, but to the brain, it feels like, I'm just saying, like, that's what it feels like. You're doing something that is... So the image that comes to mind is, the elderly, the myths of, like, say, the elderly Native Americans, and when you were too big of a burden on a group, you put yourself on the boat and then you just sailed off out into the tundra to die, more or less, right, away from everybody else, right? And that's what I'm saying. It is a thing that feels that unsafe that there's a reason people don't do that, because it feels like they're doing that unnecessarily. Like, people are not going to voluntarily put themselves on an ice raft and send themselves out into the social wilderness. And even though we know that it's not that bad, it's okay, you'll sleep in on Sundays and watch football like everybody else and you'll be fine, to them it feels like they're doing something so dangerous. And that's because we just haven't evolved yet. We haven't evolved brains that are like, different social groups are optional. We've evolved a brain that's like, isolation equals death, so don't do it.
Well, I would say it depends to some degree on the individual. For me, I have a lot of varied life experience, sort of been there and done that. And I'll go back to a conversation that my assistant and I had, because she was having a difficult time with something. And I sat down and sat down with her and she says, "Why aren't you worried?" My reaction was a reaction that many of the mentors I had to me. I smiled. I said, the only things you don't walk away from are the ones that kill you.
Yeah.
That's it. You have a rough experience. The bridge isn't going to be built on time, on budget, whatever. You're going to be okay. The process may need to be interrupted and you might be cast out of it. You're going to be okay. There's something else out there, another project that needs you. They need what you know. They need the value of your experience and your attitude, your remarkable, wonderful attitude. They need that too.
Absolutely.
I need that here, but that's needed all over. Just so you know. Matter
of fact, I think that's believe it or not, I think more and more that's what we got to do to get people out of religion. Is we've got to start to build these other social structures, these other community structures, these other support structures. That way, I hate to say this, but we can give people hope, meaning, and purpose. Right? Because we could say, hey, look, there's hope that your life can still be great. Just as and not only that, meaning and purpose. Like, we need you. Hey, if you love being part of that church community because you cooked, and every Sunday people kept coming down to the kitchen, right? Because I'm talking about real people. Let's talk about real people I know who do this, right? Come on, y'all. I'm talking about the black church. Everybody know what I'm talking about. They had you in church for 3-4 hours every Sunday, and the only way people get through it is because it's like a fried chicken dinner or something going down in the basement after church every afternoon on Sunday. Now stop acting like y'all don't know what I'm talking about. Okay? Now there's some old ladies in that church that's a huge sense of purpose. Think about it. They are community hubs, right? They are feeding people, literally every Sunday's Thanksgiving for these people, right? And they're feeding the young, the old, every generation. Now, as part of that, they know everybody's story. They know who's doing well in school, who's not, who's dating who and who's not, which couples are struggling and which ones aren't, what's all the dirt on the pastor. They know all of this. So part of what Theremin Trees is telling us is that's a huge part of what's keeping them indoctrinated in that cult. So if you think you're going to just hit them with some facts, hey, there's some historical inconsistencies as to the authorship of the Bible. Hey, we're not really sure if it's reasonable to believe that a person was born to a virgin. They're not hearing any of that. They're not hearing any of that. What they hear is you trying to take them away from this thing that gives them hope, meaning, and purpose. So we got to, I don't know how, but start to establish different communities. So we say, hey, look, we have an atheist community center, or just a community center. We don't have to call it just a community center, right? And in this community center, we're trying to have Sunday dinners. And we need some people who we really know could cook. Now, look, let me tell you what's going on in this community center. Believe it or not, in this community center, it's a tutoring center. People vote. It's a public library. There's a women's shelter. Okay, there's a place where we do parenting class. There's a driving school, right? You got to really sell the fact that this community center is a very important part of the community, and it really does, need a shot in the arm by some people who are known and respected, becoming personal assets, right? So that a person really does feel like, oh, and it's a hypothetical situation, y'all, right? But if this person's going to hypothetically leave their church, there's still a sense of hope, meaning, and purpose, because there's still people that need them meals. There's still other communities that are trying to turn every Sunday into Thanksgiving. That's important. I got to a point even as a musician, right, where I started to say to myself, I have to start a band. Part of the reason I had to start a band, y'all, why? I was playing in church. What did that mean? It meant I was playing in church multiple times a week. I was loving the life. I was doing rehearsal. I had the whole band experience. And then what I started to say to myself, Jay, if you want to live this meaningful musician life, you're a drummer. That's who you are. You're a pocket locker. If you're going to live this life, if you only play in church, you're only ever going to feel disconnected, this sense of having a band, this sense of gigging regularly in church. And if ultimately you want to be able to have the full musician experience and not have it dependent on the church, your ass need to get out there and start a band. So again, that sense of hope, meaning, and purpose you get from playing music, you can still get without having to play songs about Jesus, just to get that sense of hope, meaning, and purpose. So I'm speaking to something that's very real in my own life. I just realized that, hey, I love playing for church. This atheist drummer thing is really, really cool. But if I'm going to feel this way for me on some other thing, I got to get going. And I'm just saying we got to offer that to people. I think to people like me, get you another one. I come from generations of preachers. When my family really gets a load of what I do, they're going to realize the light bulb goes off, bing. They're going to say, Jay's just a preacher, just like the 5 generations of men in his family that came before him. He just became an atheist, actually found a community of other atheists. Then people was willing to subscribe to his YouTube channel and listen to him rant and rave from his pulpit in Michigan with my one black friend or Uncle Bobby. And again, I'm a person. I used to work out of church, y'all. I love working out of church. I almost didn't go back to school, right? We talk about how religion interferes with people's professional and personal development. It was really hard for me to go back to Penn State. Why? I had so much hope, meaning, and purpose working at that church. I was working with children. I was working for the city. I was bartending. I was playing drums. I was a full-time community organizer. Newark has very few people who get paid to be a community. I was a full-time community organizer. I was working with politicians. They were probably going to run me for office if all I had to do was stay. The church wanted to put me on the deacon board. I had a great life. Mm-hmm. So, but again, I've been able to recapture that same passion, that same energy in a secular context. And I just think it's important that we think about those ways. I want to get back to the video, but go ahead, my one black friend. I want to, should I just go back to the video? You got something else here?
No. There's a second little test.
Yeah, go ahead.
So remember Mark chapter 16. Let's see. Chapter 16, verse 17. And these signs shall follow them that believe in my name. They shall cast out devils. They shall speak in new tongues. Remember all this, and be able to lay hands on people and heal them, drink poison and not die. Let's go over to Matthew. And I'm going to go to chapter 19. I'll start in verse 12, only because of the last sentence that's in verse 12, which is, he that is able to receive it, let him receive it. So I'll read the part before that. For there are some eunuchs which were born so from their mother's womb, and there are some eunuchs which were made eunuchs of men, and there be eunuchs which have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it. Verse 13. Then were there brought unto him little children, that he put his hands on them and pray, and the disciples rebuked them. So these people brought their kids to Jesus so he can lay hands on them. You will remember that it says in verse 18 of Mark 16, they shall lay hands on the sick and they shall recover. Remember that. So Matthew. So the disciples rebuked the people for bringing their kids up to Jesus so Jesus could lay hands on them,
Right.
heal them. Oddly enough, the disciples didn't seem to have this ability at the time. You would think Jesus would say, this is sort of a priority that you all have this ability too, but instead, he didn't bother with that.
Yeah, matter of fact, it would have been really a great time for him to say, no. Actually, you lay your hands on them to prove that by your belief in me alone, you can heal them.
That's an excellent point.
And why wouldn't, matter of fact, if they could write the Bible today, they should have put that in there, right? They should have added that. Modern biblical writers probably would have added that in. The modern apologists would have realized that's the story we really need, right?
Well, you know what, though? What you said is very powerful. The story we really need. I do believe that at the time, this was the story they felt that the Hebrew people of that age needed.
Now let me ask you a question. My story actually is worse than theirs. Their story is better. Why is that? Because their story at least provides cover. If there was a biblical story about Jesus demonstrating the transitive power, then you'd really have a problem with the fact that you can't lay hands on people and heal people. Because it would have been setting a biblical expectation. At least Jesus does say it, right? But at least you don't see stories of the apostles doing it. Because that would really...
You do. You see it in Acts.
Who's the laying of hands in Acts? What's the laying hands in Acts? Who does it?
I don't recall, but the disciples do it in Acts.
Oh, they do. Okay.
They have that power, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's it. Yeah. That's what you need.
Spirit. They get the Holy Spirit, and then they can pull a rabbit out of their hat. They just have all sorts of abilities.
They got all sorts of magic powers after that. Yeah, that's what Christians should be expecting. All right, let's get to some of this video. I'm not sure.
Wait. Let me go.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Verse 14 of Matthew 19. But Jesus said, suffer the little children and forbid them not. So he's saying suffers permit. Permit the little children and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. And he laid his hands on them and departed thence. It doesn't say they were healed right here, you notice, but I guess that's
right. Yeah.
And behold, this is so important for those people. I'm basically trying to refute the point, Pocket Locker. You're saying those people need an alternate hope, meaning, and purpose. What I'm about to read, in my opinion, shows no, they don't. They don't have the one they think they do right now. They are not as invested as they think they are right now. So you will have heard this story. Most of our viewers probably will have heard this story as well. And I apologize for my voice. It is what it is. Normally it's buttery smooth. Today it's 3 packs a day. And behold, one came and said unto him, Good master, what good thing shall I do that I may have eternal life? And Jesus said to him, Why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, that is God. But if thou wilt enter into life, keep the commandments. He saith unto him, that's the guy Jesus is talking to, said unto Jesus, which Jesus said, thou shalt do no murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness. Honor thy father and thy mother, and thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. The young man saith unto him, all these things I have kept from my youth up. What lack I yet? Here we go, pocket blocker. Jesus said to him, if thou wilt be perfect, go and sell all thou hast and give it to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven, and come and follow me. So if you really want to test the sincerity of any Christian, ask them, have they done this?
What, the abandoning of their riches and leave everything behind, get rid of everything.
So look, this is not like I'm holier than them or anything. But if I do this thing where I move to another country for 6 months, 8 months, whatever, I'm selling my house. I'm going to keep my truck, maybe a few other things, and I'm gone. I'm not trying to hold on to a bunch of stuff here in the United States if I'm not going to be near. My life now, I travel. I've spent more this year right now. I've spent more nights in a hotel room than I have my own home. It's December. Right? Every other year of my life now is like this. So I'm just gone so long, half a year basically. So my attachment to that house hasn't existed for years. It's where a bunch of things I don't care about are stored. Right?
Absolutely.
I could expense it all, or just give it all away and walk away, and be happy that I don't have to think about it. Well, there's nothing to steal now except for my truck. Even my Prius. I've already got somebody I'm going to give that to when I leave. So, but to challenge them in this way, Jesus says it. If thou wilt be perfect. So let me go back up because there's something I didn't catch first. Because I think he says something like that twice. Okay. In verse 17, he says, and he said unto him, why callest thou me good? There's none good but one, that is God. But if thou wilt enter into life, keep the commandments. So there you go. He's telling him, here's things you can do to be better.
Right.
In alignment, but then he's saying, if you would be perfect, if that's what you truly want. So anybody who's unwilling to do this, in my eyes, right, I can be an apologist. I told you I still want to do that episode where I have the audience versus me as an apologist. Y'all bring it on, because I can just knock them back over the head, I think. But they're not going for it. They're not going to do it.
Right.
They won't even empty their pockets. Right.
Right.
Many of them wouldn't even give their leftovers to a homeless person. I paid good money for this.
Right.
Yeah, but they need it more than you do. Let's just go. So I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
But the Bible continues on verse 22. When the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. Then Jesus said to his disciples, verily I say unto you, that a rich man shall hardly enter into the kingdom of heaven. Where I guess the less wealthy people have their treasure stored.
Right.
Again, I say unto you, it is easier for a camel to walk through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Then get this, when his disciples heard it, they were exceedingly amazed, saying, who then can be saved? Now, think of that. These disciples, we're told they're poor fishermen. But he says it's easier for a camel to walk through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. What the heck are they amazed about? Why are they saying, who then can be saved? Is everybody rich? Where they are? I don't know. I never noticed that before.
No, but I think they recognize that that's what everybody's aspiring to.
That's a really important pocket locker. I like that.
You know,
very
it's
much.
almost like they're wrestling with the fact that Jesus has just said either you're either damned in this life or the next, because the only people who can, you know, pass Jesus's test of getting into, you know, the kingdom of heaven are the people who suffer greatly here. And since no one is going to voluntarily greatly suffer here, everybody, because again, like you just said, comfort, acceptance, love, you know, you need that comfort. So everybody has this natural inclination towards moving towards comfort. So who can be saved? Because, you know, they recognize that not a whole lot of people are going to pick up this message of the kingdom of heaven and say, okay, well, I'm willing to starve myself and give up everything I want just so I have salvation. And this is a really big problem, because if you're really buying Jesus on this, he's been saying this about of all time. Mm-hmm. He's not just saying, oh, right. He's really saying this. This has always been the case. He's like, oh, y'all didn't know? What? What y'all? Oh, yeah, you didn't know? Yo, what you thought? All them past pharaohs and kings and all? Oh, no. Oh, no. All the people you thought was the saint? No. Ain't none of them getting in here. All right, we got less than 10 minutes. Let me play a little bit more of this so we can, just so I get to my 5:30 on time.
Sure.
Let's go back to Ian and see how he gets recruited by a group claiming clusters of alien spirits are attached to us all, keeping us from our full potential. Ian is approached on the street by a woman with a personality questionnaire. He agrees to accompany her inside the official premises behind her, where he spends half an hour completing it. His results show him to be unstable, depressed, nervous, and overly critical. These conflict with his self-image, but the woman talks with him for a further half hour about his life, his frustrations, his disappointments, and draws tentative connections with his results. She says her group runs courses that can help him become a more effective person. Ian's natural caution stops him from signing up for a course, but he agrees to buy a cheap book. He now experiences his first cognitive dissonance in the group's favor. He has two conflicting cognitions. One, that he's not interested, but two, that he's just invested an hour of his time and bought a book. Dissonance leads him to adjust his first cognition and rationalize that he is interested. Going home, he dips into the book and reflects on the idea of becoming a more effective person. The questionnaire results begin to play on his mind. Despite himself, he begins to select confirming information, finding memories that match the results. Deciding he has nothing to lose by giving it a go, he returns and signs up for a course about communication. Ian is now locked into a commitment cycle. The more time and money he invests, the more he becomes convinced it's worthwhile. The easier he's persuaded to invest more time and money in further courses. The courses include odd activities like sitting in silence staring at another member, or endlessly picking up the same object. These meaningless tasks confuse Ian and induce trance states and hallucinations, increasing his susceptibility to direction. At the end of each course, Ian has to write up and read out loud to the group how the course helped him. This forces him not only to find meaning in the meaningless tasks, but to declare it publicly. Declaring benefits he doesn't really feel creates dissonance, which Ian reduces by rationalizing that he does feel benefits. His dissonance is further reduced in two ways. First, Ian's speech receives huge praise and applause from other members, validating his words and building on his feelings of acceptance and loyalty to the group. Second, the testimony of other members further justifies the idea that the tasks had meaning. Other activities train Ian not to react to provocation, for instance when being goaded with insults and jokes by other members. Ian learns to disconnect from confrontation. He rationalizes that this training is helping him focus. It'll soon be put to other uses. Ian's told of the group's interest in the betterment of humankind. Their aim is total freedom for everyone on the planet. This resonates powerfully with his own humanitarian concerns. But he's told about critics who want to sabotage this important work, spreading lies and alienating members. The group encourages Ian to avoid mainstream media for this reason. He's always been against censorship, but censorship has now been repackaged as a sensible precaution against destructive critics. The group now controls all information about the group. When later confronted by critics in person, Ian automatically disconnects from them, as he's been trained to do, blocking out the very folks who could help him. In everyday life, Ian feels better, sharper, more confident, more effective. But it's an illusion. With the group's courses pitched at kindergarten levels, in developmental terms, far from being stretched, Ian's been slowly regressing. After completing the basic courses, Ian's processed straight into the next level. A strange, over-ritualized kind of counseling is introduced, using lie detector-like technology to gauge his emotional reaction as he repeatedly confronts difficult memories. The aim is to nullify all emotional reaction to past traumas until it no longer registers on the apparatus. These counseling sessions are expensive, sometimes very tiring, but he frequently emerges feeling lighter. The sessions take him further and further into the past until he's not quite sure if he's dealing with real memories. Ian visits his parents. He talks about the group. His father is concerned about the money Ian's getting through and does an internet search on the group. He's disturbed at what he reads and asks Ian to take a look, but Ian declines, saying it's all lies. When he tells the group about his parents' reaction, Ian finds himself being interviewed at length, with concerns expressed about how their influence could seriously damage his progress. At the end of an exhausting session, Ian agrees to only discuss superficial subjects with his parents. He takes the issue to counseling.
Cheers, gang. We only got a few minutes here. I'm gonna let them play through this part, but this technique is called gray rocking. Look it up. It's something I'm really struggling with because I feel like it's what's been going on in my family for decades, and I really need to address it. But of course, when you're in a family that's been gray rocking for decades, it's not exactly a great climate for these conversations.
To nullify his emotional reaction. The group's noble aim of total freedom for everyone on the planet has been repackaged. Total freedom now means freedom to do what the group allows. Everyone on the planet now means everyone who remains uncritical of the group. 3 years and thousands of dollars later, Ian's completed 2 levels of counseling. He's also expecting his second child with his new wife, also a member of the group. Time for level 3. He's led into a room and shown a document that tells him the following information. Millions of years ago, an evil galactic ruler transported billions of aliens to Earth in space.
He said, is Carrie-Ann in Gather? No, Carrie-Ann is not in Gather. She was in the chat earlier.
Planes, placed them around volcanoes, and blew them up with nuclear weapons. As they departed from their bodies, the alien spirits were then captured in electronic traps and subjected to a month-long 3D propaganda movie that implanted false ideas in them, including the world religions. These alien spirits roamed the Earth aimlessly, and when humans evolved, they attached themselves in clusters to their bodies. These alien spirits are what keep humans from fulfilling their full potential. Ian now experiences perhaps the most violent dissonance of his life. If he rejects the alien story, he's out, and all the time, energy, and money he's invested in the group has been wasted. The group's strict policy of shunning dissenters also means the loss of his wife, his children, and all his friends. But beyond even these threatening realities is a deep-seated belief that will keep him under the group's influence, hemorrhaging money for another 2 years. I could never be manipulated. To him, the only folks who fall for cons are gullible, acquiescent, stupid. And that's just not him. And indeed, that wasn't him. Nonetheless, he was recruited. Not because of some personality deficiency, but simply because he's a human being who, like all of us, possesses a brain that's evolved to strive towards consistency. In his extreme state of dissonance, Ian is led directly into a counseling session to nullify his emotional reaction.
All right, I'm really fascinated by this. I do have to get to a 5:30 with my group, so we'll probably watch the rest of this and gather. So I'm going to end the stream after we wrap up here with my one black friend, and then I will actually stream church and then and gather, and then we will go ahead and do Sunday night football tonight and our normal stuff. So go ahead and link up with the gang and gather if you are not already. Of course, that's actually where my one black friend and I are right now with AR. But yeah, my one black friend, go ahead and give us your thoughts on this. Sorry, I wanted you to the thoughts. Blang, boom. Through the thing. Also, I can't hear you.
Thank you for reminding me. Just keep in mind it's remarkably evil. I guess it's remarkably evil too, to manipulate someone. At least it can be. So just keep that in mind. And if you have somebody going through this, you might want to link this Theremin Trees video and sit down with them and watch it and say, you know, does this remind you of what you're going through? Because it reminded me of that. And do you think I'm wrong? If so, excuse me, please share with me why you think I'm wrong about that. Where does this video go off track, or where does my opinion go off track? And at least that starts a conversation that's not threatening. Why? Because a third party has made this video.
Sure.
And though they may be, I mean, I don't know. You probably don't know Theremin Trees, and Theremin Trees probably doesn't know your friend.
Right.
So that's it. That's all I got to say. And I guess I'll repeat the words of someone from my past. Be gentle. When you do it, be gentle.
Yeah. So I want to ask you about that, which I think is a sort of a good way to wrap. What talk to us about sharing, because I actually think these conversations are very difficult to have. A lot of our audience is not maybe geared to bring them up. I actually think content can be really useful because it allows the person to sort of watch it on their own time, process it themselves, and then maybe y'all can have a conversation about it later. But how do you go about how would you maybe suggest going about sharing something like this? I tend to just send links via email or text message, but I don't know if that's, what do you think?
I want to say initially avoid saying I'm concerned, because that makes the defenses go up in a certain way. Let's just give it a name. And marker, like I'm a Sharpie here. So I've heard you've been using a lot of markers lately, and I'm concerned. What is your goal with using markers? And then they'll tell you about it. And then you can start asking them questions. Does it bring you comfort? Blah, 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 blah. And then come around to, do you have any concerns about it? And if they say no, what the heck could it possibly be that they wouldn't have concerns about? If you buy a new car, you're concerned about how long it's going to last.
Right.
If it's a lease, you're concerned about the darn payments and what you didn't read because you didn't read the contract. How many miles are you going to go over? How expensive that's going to be? What's your buyout? You don't know those things.
Right.
You constantly referring back to, oh, it's this, it's this. Oh, I didn't read that. Shoot. So once they start talking about their concerns, if they're willing to, you can say, I saw this video I'd like to share with you, and it made me worry. And if you could watch it with me and tell me that there's no need for me to worry, like, the stuff in this video really was concerning to me, and I'm worried about you. And, if you think everything's okay, it's probably okay, but just watch this with me so I know. I know your thoughts on this stuff. Right. This person making this video doesn't know you. They can get a lot of stuff wrong. And even me thinking that it reminds me of you, you can tell me where I'm wrong. You have that. You've opened the door. You've asked for their opinion. You're using them as an authority for them to assess what they've gone through, what they may see coming, because this video sort of predicts the progress of the process.
Right.
And that could be extremely useful, because if they haven't reached, I'm just going to say step 3, they haven't reached step 3, and then next week somebody whips out step 3 on them, they have been warned, and their brain's going to say, no, wait a second. This is like that video Pocket Locker showed me.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes. And that's,
and then, they may sweep that under the rug. Then when step 4 rolls around, okay, this is BS. I'm out.
Yeah. So I think, we got to wrap. But I was just going to say the thing I think is great there is that just sometimes it's good because it just plants a seed, and then it may actually be that something happens down the road, or so it may not be a reaction to something that's already happened. They may not be there yet. But maybe you plant the seed and then something happens down the road that reminds them of the seed you planted. This was great. Appreciate everybody. I'm going to try to get out of here so my club doesn't get on me. But as always, we appreciate you guys. Be good to yourselves.
And each other.
And we will see you next week.
See you next week.
Poof.
I got to call my assistant.
Yeah. Thanks so much, man.
She goes off the rails.
I'll see you later.
All right, see you later. Bye-bye.